Greetings, fellow traveller. Tired from the hardships of your journey? Here, take a seat by the fire and let me spin you a grim tale of a dark future where there is only war. Today's tale is quite brief but quite interesting nonetheless, namely, the daily routine of Space Marines. We all know that Space Marines spend their lives on the battlefield fighting the most devastating and lethal wars to put an end to the worst threats to mankind, be they Xenos, mutants, or heretics. But what do Space Marines do when they're not in combat? How do they spend their time travelling from one system to another through the warp, or while assigned to a garrison position defending their fortress monastery or on a random space station? Well, as with everything to do with Space Marines, this varies quite a lot with each chapter, but thanks to the 3rd edition Space Marine Codex, we do have a list of Space Marine assignments throughout the day to give us a better idea. So without further ado, let's dive into the lore. A new day dawns for a Space Marine, either in his fortress monastery or on one of the battle cruisers of his chapter, although actually maybe it hasn't dawned yet, because according to their schedule, at 4 AM Space Marines have to be awake and ready to perform a morning prayer led by the chaplain of their company. Early bird catches the worm, as they say. During the morning prayer, Marines renew their oaths to the Emperor and chapter relics might be displayed. These prayers can vary greatly depending on the chapter, as not all chapters follow the Imperial Creed or believe the Emperor to be a god. In fact, those who do are in the minority, so although the Codex does state morning prayer, it doesn't strictly have to be a prayer or a religious activity at all. This simply means it's a moment to renew their oaths and reaffirm their loyalty to the Emperor, their Primarch, and or their chapter. Or, on the other hand, if we are talking about a religious chapter like the Black Templars for example, they will absolutely pray as if it were some kind of joint mass, praying to the God Emperor, their Primarch, or some other Imperial saint. Apart from the prayer or oaths of fealty, this moment can also be used to deliver orders, announce important issues and other administration tasks that should be carried out throughout the day. At 5 AM, the Marines are already carrying out target practice with their personal equipment and that of their squad. Depending on their accuracy, they'll be given awards or punishments. At 7 AM, it's time for combat training, usually focused on melee combat, although sometimes this can also be substituted for combat training in hostile environments, such as toxic environments, fighting in extreme temperatures, in a vacuum, etc. etc. At 12 o'clock in the morning, another prayer session takes place, similar to the first one. Any Marine who's been wounded during the training sessions can also use this moment to go to the apothecary and get his wounds healed. At 1 o'clock it's lunchtime. Normally, and if possible, the Marines will eat the local fauna they've hunted during the morning training sessions. And they have to do it quite fast because they only have 15 minutes to eat. Many say they don't want to be Space Marines because of the 1,000 horrible ways they might die in, but on the other hand, their schedule isn't anything to look forward to either. At 1:15, it's time for tactical indoctrination. This can address several different subjects, either a new Xenos species to learn about the enemy and know how to defeat them, the use of new technologies they must master, or new strategies to be carried out on the battlefield. Also, they might take this time to go over and review battle plans for their next campaign or any battle they might be heading to travelling through the warp, or if they're expecting an attack at their current position. In addition, this time might be also used to debrief the morning training exercises. At 3 o'clock they're back in combat training. This time the training will be focused on combined tactics, both firearms, melee combat, and also in coordination with vehicles, dreadnoughts, and different specialized Space Marine squads such as Devastators or Assault Marines. Also, they might use these training sessions to introduce some of the new tactics learned during the previous tactical brief, to see how well the tactic or strategy works, and if the Marines are able to execute it to perfection. After 5 hours of combat training at 8 o'clock, it's time for the evening prayer. This also might be the time to carry out routine gene seed checks to check its purity and make sure all the organs are functioning properly. At 9 o'clock, it's time for dinner. This time, the Marines get the generous amount of half an hour to eat, which is considerably better than lunchtime. Here, the chapter serfs will cook a feast for the Marines, and some chapter masters will allow their Marines to consume alcohol. At 9:30, it's time for night firing exercises. Here, the Marines will have another shooting practice session where perhaps those Marines who've drunk too much alcohol won't be very competent at all, but actually it's very difficult for a Marine to get drunk consuming alcohol. Their organs are just so effective in evacuating toxic substances such as ethanol that a standard Space Marine can fill both stomachs with strong alcohols such as Sacra or Amasec and not get drunk in the slightest. Although there are some chapters who have taken this as a personal challenge and developed their own alcohols strong enough to get a Space Marine drunk despite the efficiency of their organs. Space Wolves, for example, drink their famous Mjod, get drunk, and usually behave like true Vikings during their dinners and feasts. And even Iron Hands seem to have distilled their own alcohol that once even got Rogel Dawn to raise an eyebrow. Although, truth be told, it wasn't clear if it was in appreciation of their alcohol or in disapproval of their actions. But if it was indeed because he liked it, that's got to be one hell of a drink. Who would have guessed that apart from being massive nerds, Iron Hands could cook up such badass booze? Anyway, back to the night firing exercises. If a chapter lives on a world where there is no night, or its fortress monastery is mobile, such as chapters that are fleet-based like the Dark Angels, instead they'll carry out their target practice in exotic environments like underwater, in thick fog, or in zero gravity. At 11:15, it's time for maintenance rituals. In this time, each Space Marine is expected to perform maintenance on their own power armor and weapons, and if needed, they can also be inspected or repaired by a Tech Marine. Although it may seem so, this is no trivial task. Space Marines must take great care of their own equipment because their lives literally depend on it. One small flaw in their power armor or their weapons could be exploited by the enemy and cost the Marine his life or that of his battle brothers. At 11:45, Space Marines are allotted 15 minutes of free time, which isn't much to be honest, but hey, it's something. Here, Space Marines are allowed to reflect on their duty to the Emperor or do whatever they want. Although many chapters view this free time as a complete waste of time and even a dangerous distraction. However, several different chapters do encourage various practices according to the chapter's traditions and culture for their Marines to carry out during their free time. To give a few examples, Blood Angels often create works of art such as paintings, sculptures, musical compositions, etc. The Salamanders, if they can, will spend time with their families on Nocturne. Imperial Fists usually devote themselves to architecture and urban design, and the White Scars foster what they call the noble pursuits. Among them, calligraphy, hunting, poetry, viticulture, archery, horse taming, throat singing, astrology, painting, craftsmanship, sewing, and mastery of the Tagorian language. On an interesting and slightly heretical side note, the Iron Warriors have a very peculiar hobby indeed, in which they recreate sieges and battle simulations with cogitators and holograms. In other words, Iron Warriors literally play Dawn of War. Well, actually it might be something more close to the Total War Warhammer 40k game we all dream of. However, Iron Warriors don't see this as a game or a pastime, or well, maybe they partly do, but these simulations serve more to refine their sense of military strategy and hone their siegecraft. 12 o'clock at night, the Space Marines' rest period begins. Technically, this would be when Space Marines go to sleep, because they only have 4 hours to rest before starting the same routine again the next day. One might say that 4 hours is very little time indeed. In fact, it's half of what a human supposedly needs for their brain and body to rest and be able to function properly the next day. But the Astartes, thanks to their augmented bodies, don't need as much time as we mere mortals. In fact, Space Marines can go on several days without sleeping without it affecting their performance. So, if they wish, they could dedicate these 4 hours to their personal hobbies and projects and use it as more free time. I mean, I'm guessing they'll be free to take those 4 hours as free time if they wish to. It's not like the chaplain's going to suddenly appear, tell them off and send them to bed. Although the idea might sound funny, this isn't the Boy Scouts. Well, actually, if we're talking about the ultramarines, this might be the case, and a chaplain might appear, tell you off, turn the light off and send you to bed early to make sure you follow the rules like any good ultrasmurf. All in all, this is a day in the life of a space marine. A few prayers/oath sessions, a lot of combat training to hone their combat skills to perfection, and a couple masterclasses on military theory or Xenos threats and how to eliminate them. Ultimately, Space Marines pass every moment of each day honing their bodies and minds to be the Emperor's best weapons against Xenos, mutants, and heretics. Well, there you have it, the daily routine of a Space Marine. As mentioned before, this is a pretty standard schedule and it will most definitely vary depending on the chapter, since each chapter is unique and has their own way of doing things. But in general, this schedule does give us quite a good idea of what a day in a Space Marine's life could look like. If you liked the video, you know the drill. Like and subscribe for more content and leave a comment below. Thanks for watching and hopefully we'll meet again in the next video.